Hello everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or whatever it is that you're doing. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll be your programming tutorial tutor once again. This time, we're going to continue on our path of making our own game. We are going to basically start learning how to modify attributes of a character. That way you can start playing and start adjusting things to get a better feeling for your character's movement. I'm going to go over everything here in a few minutes, but I did want to show you what the final result of today should look like, or basically the final result of this short tutorial, what you should be able to accomplish. So if you watched the video yesterday, we got familiar with Unreal. So we're going to play this. We have this character in the game. We should be able to move with him regularly. This is part of the Unreal setup process and the basic Unreal tutorial. So this is nothing crazy. But what I added is sprinting to the game. So if you press shift, you notice I'm going a lot faster. Have a lot more velocity. And then if I release shift, I go back to the normal speed that I am. I did not change the animation simply because I didn't have one. But we can change the animation speed and all of that. I didn't want to get too advanced today, so I just want to change some attributes so you can start getting a feel for what it takes to change these things on a character. And I also wanted to finish getting you set up. So last time we went over learning Unreal and Visual Studio, like I said, but I want to actually get you set up where you can add your own files, add your own assets, and kind of figure out exactly how you're going to start building this world. So we have our Gears of War template, which is what I was showing you how to make earlier. We are going to initially go over some source control stuff. So let's go over how to get your source control on here. So I mentioned this in the last episode, but source control is used so that when you are continuing progress on your project, if you make a change that you don't like, or you make a change that breaks things, especially in a group project where there's a lot of people modifying the code, or at work when there's a lot of people modifying your code base, you want to kind of have a flow to, these people submitted these files, I submitted these files, we don't need these people's files anymore, things like that. For yourself and for a personal project, it's not that important, to be honest, when you're just getting started. However, I want to start you guys off on the best possible foot. So let's get into it. So source control. Personally, if you go into here, and I think I can run without source control. Let me disable it so we can go through the whole process together. So if you come into here, you can run the, there we go. Now that we have this pulled up. So if you come into here, you see source control, which we went over last time. So source control, we can hit that and hit connect to source control. Now, personally, I prefer Perforce to the other options when working with Unreal. However, I think it is much easier to get started with Git, and I think Git is also easier to use if you're just doing a personal project for yourself, especially because Git has GitHub online. So you can just put this repository online, and I'll actually be able to share the code, and I'll be able to share this entire project with you guys online. So if you're interested in downloading it at the end and you don't want to code it for yourself, that is okay. You can end up playing the end result. Also, you can take my files and modify them to fit your own needs. So we're going to pick Git. It says beta version, but that's actually okay. And then I've already entered my information here. But this is going to be, the root of the repository is going to be where you want Git to track everything. So if you see here, I have my Documents, Unreal Projects, Gears of War template. This is all the files in the project that I will be using. So those are the ones that I want to make sure if anything changes within this folder or any of these subfolders, I will want to keep those changes. There's a reason I'm changing them, and the reason is related to this project. I wouldn't want to put it, for example, in Documents, because that would mean every change that I make in Documents would be related to this project. So if I end up reverting something, I could revert something on my computer outside of this project. So make sure you put this in the right spot. Put this wherever your project is located. And Unreal will automatically make this project folder if you don't give it anything else, if you don't rename it or anything like that. So you will have this. You won't have to create this. And it will probably be here. This is the default location. I think Unreal projects might be named like My Projects on certain versions and things like that. But just look for where your Unreal projects are located. Then here you go. So here's your file. You'll know you did it correctly because you will get .get, .vs. Actually, this is from Visual Studio, excuse me. You will get the .get file if you have hidden files enabled, and you will have the .getignore. Also, this README. So that's fine. Don't worry about this too much if it's a lot already. I was just showing you for people who are interested in to see if they did it right. So going through the process entirely is basically you just have... This will stay the same unless you installed Git somewhere else on your computer. If you let it install the default location and all of that, this will go to the right spot. So don't worry about that. Just pull this down. Git beta version. Put the path that you want. Again, I've already selected mine. But if you just type in... If you just find users, name, documents, Unreal projects, and then your project, you'll be in the right spot. And then you do have to kind of enter some information to log into Git, but that'll be self-explanatory when you're doing it for the first time. It'll run you through that, so that's nothing hard. Then you hit accept settings, and there you go. Connection to source control was successful. So now that it's successful, we can basically keep track of all the changes that we're going to do. So I know that's a lot for people who have never done it before. I completely understand that, and I'm not really expecting you to do it now. I'm just kind of teaching you how to do it. That way you can use it later on in the project. It would be good to start it now, but I think you're going to want to kind of get into the groove of doing it over time. Like, personally, when I learned about it, I was pretty bad about using it, and then as I started to use it, I've learned how important it was, so then it was no problem for me to use it. But that's something you should keep in your head while we do all this, because I personally will be pushing my changes so that I can save my changes on Git at the end of every tutorial. That way, when you guys look at the repository online, you can see what I've accomplished each episode. If anything goes wrong, you can pull this version and then work from that tutorial. You can always ask me any questions as well. So I know that was a long-winded explanation of, well, technically, it was a very quick explanation of a very large topic, which is source control. But I know it's long-winded for people who might not have experience with that. So let's ignore that, get that out of our heads now, and get into what you actually want to get into, which is, making your own game. Okay, so now that we're in Unreal, you're probably wondering how I got this little map here. So last time when I was in the last episode, we were doing the Unreal tutorial stuff. We did a new project, and I'll do it here. And I had hit C++ blank or basic code. So that was good, and I wanted to do a tutorial on that, but I got requests specifically for doing a third-person tutorial. So I figured I would actually do that, especially because I've never made a third-person game before. I made first-person 2.5, which is like a 3D environment, but a fighting game like Street Fighter. I've made platformers, top-down shooters, like twin-stick shooters, that kind of stuff. So I figured third-person would be fun, and it would be something you guys could show people, and, they'd be really proud of you. So when you're making your project, you can hit this third-person template, and this will give you the assets for the character and the blocks and even the level. So if you just hit New Project, C++, third-person, and then name it whatever you want, Create Project, then you'll see this. This is not, I did not change anything to get this little environment here. So you'll have this. Excellent. Now what you're going to want to do to actually start programming stuff is you're going to want to go to Add New C++ class, and then you can choose whatever you want here for your parent class. So let me explain the important ones. So character is the one that I'm doing today. Character is the one that allows you to move around and adjust the way they're looking in the world. So like their orientation, the way that they move around, basic things like that. It deals with a lot of more complex things as well, but that's the most important thing. It'll deal with your states like walking, jumping, flying, and swimming, like this says. Right now we're just using it for walking and jumping, but we can expand that later. So, you also, important to note, well, if you're going to do this, you can hit character, next, and then name it whatever you want. You're going to have to type this name in a lot, so name it something short, but something that you'll know exactly what it is. You can leave everything else the same afterward. Just name it whatever you want and hit create class. Now, this is important to note. You might not have to do that. Depending on your version of Unreal, you might already have a class made for you when you made the project that is specific to your project. Does that make sense? So if it doesn't, just look at what I'm doing here. You have, if you click this button, because your view probably looks like this right now, or probably this. If you click this button right here, which is like the hamburger menu with an arrow, if you click that, this should open up and give you access to your C++ classes. If you click on C++ classes, you might have this template folder here already. If you do, click into this and it will have some classes for you. Probably a game mode class and a character class. Now see, I had made a playable character, which I accidentally made a player controller, so that was me being stupid. But I didn't end up needing this. I left this in here so that I could show you guys that the new versions of Unreal, which you're probably downloading if you're new to Unreal, actually don't require you to make your own class right off the bat. So you should have a class in here. Mine was, it's the project name, character, and the project name, game mode. So we're going to be focusing on the project name character. So mine is Gears of War template character. So if you load this up, which I already had up, this is Visual Studio. We went over Visual Studio a bit in the last episode. And we're just going to make a few changes to kind of introduce you to the code base and not overwhelm you. But we're going to make changes that you can see in-game so you know that they're working. So when you click on this, you'll have two files open. You'll have a .cpp file and a .h file. The .h file is the header file. That's the file that controls all your variables, function names, things like that. So this is kind of like your data file where it's not performing a lot of actions for you, but what it's doing is setting things up for you to use. The C++ file, the CPP file, is the file where you're going to do all your functionality. So when you look in here, there's already going to be a bunch of stuff in here. My scroll on my mouse is actually really not sensitive. But so you're going to see there's a bunch of stuff in here. There'll be move right, move forward, turn at rate, touch stop, touch started, on reset VR, and set up player input components, as well as a constructor. Now, again, if you're new to programming, this is going to be a lot to you, so I'm actually not going to go over almost any of it. Instead, I'm going to tell you what it is that I added so that you can get some experience typing some code in. You'll kind of get the feeling of what you have to type in, like how coding just kind of works, because it is weird changing the syntax when you don't know it. When you're going from English to C++, it can be a big change. So here's all I added to make the character sprint. I promise it's simple, and I'll walk you through the whole thing, so it won't be very stressful. If you go to the header file, you can go down to, you'll see these things on the left side. You'll see most lines of code have indents between them, but if you look all the way to the left, you'll see public, protected, protected again, and public again. So that was just the way Unreal did it, or Epic did it. You don't really have to set it up that way, but I'm not going to be changing their code for the purposes of this. I'm trying to make it easy and non-complex for you guys. So, the lines that I added, I created two functions for sprinting. One function is void sprint. So whenever you make a function in C++, you have a return type, which I'm not going to get into much this episode because next episode is the really coding heavy episode where I go over a lot of code. This I just kind of wanted to get you set up so that you can start seeing things in game. That way, if you get a little bit lost on my next episode, you can kind of play with it yourself and see what happens. Oh, if I change this line, this is what changes in game. But you're going to have this word void and the name of the function. So I wanted my character to sprint. So if you're doing that as well, I would call it void sprint, void stop sprinting. So just these two lines. This one, this one. Now, these two lines are the only two you'll need in the header file. I added some stuff like these are called comments. These green lines, these just explain what the code is intended to do. You don't need them at all. It's good practice to put them in because if other people come look at your code or you look at your code months down the line and you forget what a certain function did or what a variable was being used for, the comment will just explain it in English to you. So you don't have to add those, but I chose to add them. If you want to put it in the same spot I did, I put it right below protected, right below on reset VR function. It does not matter where you put it in this case. I will go over public, protected, and private, which are these three keywords. Private's not in this file, but public, protected, and private in the next episode. So don't worry about them too much right now, but this is where I put my two functions. If you go to the C++ file, we're going to add a few things. So if you go to the setup player input component function right here, line 54. Oh, that would be helpful. So I put my sprint and stop sprinting functions at line 38 and line 41. If you want to do the exact same as me, but you don't have to. In the C++ file, if you go to setup player input component, which is line 54, you can see that they have some things in here. Player input component bind action jump, move forward, move right. These are setting up your controls. These are talking to Unreal to determine what function gets called when you press a button. So for jump, this is on the press of jump, you're going to call the function a character jump. On the release of jump, you're going to call the function a character stop jumping. Now, we want that basically for sprinting because all we want to do is when we press a button, we want to sprint. When we release a button, we want to stop sprinting. So, literally, you can copy lines 58 and 59 and paste them right below it like I did. And then just you have to change a few things. You have to change the name instead of being jump, you're going to make it whatever you want to call it. So whatever the action is that you're planning on using. So if it's sprint, great. If it's crouch, great. Whatever you want. But if you're following this exactly, change this to sprint. And then instead of using a character is the parent class of this. So a character has functions that we won't be able to see right here. Don't worry about that for now, but you will need to change a character to this. In my case, it's the Gears of War template character, but it'll be your project name character. It's the name of the file you're in. So whatever the blue highlighted tab is that you're in, that's what this is going to be. And then sprint and stop sprinting instead of jump and stop jumping. Now that'll be the first thing that we have to add. There's one other thing that we have to add. We have to make the sprint and stop sprinting functions. So you can take a look at this code and copy it exactly if you want. But basically, to make the function, you just use this syntax, which you already saw above, so I won't go over it now. But if you have any questions, let me know. But here's my sprint function. These UE logs, these are just the print text. That way you can tell if the function is being hit or not, if you're hitting a certain condition or not, like if you're running above a certain speed, or if the player has jumped or landed on the ground. So these are not necessary. I did them to show you how to use logs. and also just because I'm in the process, or I'm in the can't think of the word, but I'm in the habit of printing logs in a lot of places when I first make functions, because it's a good way to make sure that the intended functionality you want is happening. Here's the important stuff. Is sprinting? Ignore this. Ignore this line. In fact, I'll make it easy for you. And I'll take this line away. I should have done that before. I was going to go over that, but talking about it all now makes it seem like it would be a little bit too complicated for right now. I was going to show you some animation stuff. I think we'll stop at the code bit. So this is the important line. This is the actual line that makes the character sprint. It's just one line of code. So get character movement, max walk speed equals 1500 F. F stands for float, which just basically means it can be a decimal number. So you don't have to choose 1500. 1500 is an arbitrary value that I chose. I thought it was fast enough that you guys could tell that it was sprinting. And that's all I really wanted. So you can make that 30,000 if you want. That'd be extremely fast. You can make it 2 if you want. It'd be really slow. I just chose 1500. And then stop sprinting is the same thing, except I set it to 600 because 600 is the default value in Unreal for a character's walk speed. So I'm just setting it back to default. So when you release the shift button, which is the button I'm going to use to sprint, then they will go back to their normal walking speed instead of their sprinting speed. That makes sense, right? Now, quick intermission. Anybody who knows programming, you're going to see that I'm using a pointer here without checking if it's null pointer or not. Ignore that for now. I'm trying to make this work for everybody, even people who haven't programmed a day in their life. So I know technically this should be better, but I will get to that as we move along here. To anybody who doesn't know programming, don't worry about that last thing I said yet. We'll go over that several episodes down the line, probably quite a while down the line, actually. So just put these 2 lines in. And once you're done with that, all you have to do to see your changes in-game in Unreal are go up to Build. Wait, actually, let me confirm something. So sometimes I've had people reach out to me specifically with Game Maker, but this can happen here too. You'll have your 2 projects here. You'll have UE4, which is the engine itself, and you'll have the name of your project. If the bold one in white text is the one you need to be selected. If it's not the one selected, if UE4 is bold with white text, this won't work. You'll need to select your project name, right click on it. Sorry, I clicked the wrong spot. Right click on your project name and hit set as startup project. Then it should be bold with white text. When that text is bold, you're good to go. It'll probably be bold by default, but I've had people have issues with that in the past, so I wanted to clear that up. Then all you have to do to get your code to show up in the game is go over here, hit build solution. Build solution. You're going to see some stuff over here in the output log, or you might not. It might be you might just see this error list. If you just see the error list, it's okay. We can add the output log. You just go to view up in the top here and do output or control W O. But I think it's just easier to do that, honestly. You'll hear a noise like you just did when it is done building as well, which helps. This noise will only happen if you have Unreal open at the time. If you don't have Unreal open at the time, it won't trigger that noise. You don't need Unreal open to build Visual Studio, but it just won't give you that trigger. So, and now, since you've done that, this will work. All you have to do is hit play. Again, I always prefer the new editor window. Oh, excuse me, I'm missing one step. I jumped the gun. If you go to project settings, so edit, project settings, right here next to the bottom. Go down to input, go to engine, input right here. Then you have to set up your keys. So your keys will be enabled by default, but we have to add our sprint button since that's not a default action. So how you do this, and I'll take this away so we can do it from scratch. This is what you'll see when you go into input. Make sure bindings is extended. Go to, I think these will be closed as well. Go to action mappings, extend that. Hit the plus sign. Type in the name that you have in quotes in the file. Up here. So I called mine sprint. So put sprint in right here. So sprint. Those have to be the same name, otherwise this won't work. And then you find the key you want to use. Personally, I want to use left shift to sprint. You don't need to use that. You could use whatever key you want. I'm using left shift. And then you can exit out of the project settings, or you can keep it open and just flip back over to this tab. Now play it. Now, if you walk around normally, that's the template doing its work. And then try pressing shift and you should run a lot faster. And then, now that you have that working, try something wacky just for fun. So max walk speed, 15,000. And now we can build it. It'll take probably about 20 seconds or so. We'll test it, and then you'll be good to go. You now have full access to Unreal. You have access to the project type that you want. It doesn't have to be a third-person project. You can do this with whatever you want, okay? I want to make that clear. This is pretty open-ended, but if you get confused, it would be easiest to follow my steps exactly. Now, if you do this, you should see we're insanely fast. We're like Sonic the Hedgehog here. So I personally am going to change it back because I actually felt like 1500 felt like a pretty reasonable speed, not going to lie. So I'm going to build that again. But anyway. So that was probably a lot, but I tried to keep it really low level. Or, yeah, really simple. Let's say that. It wasn't really low level or high level. It was kind of a mix of things. I tried to keep it really simple to the point where you could just start seeing things on the screen, because the most important thing is that you're enjoying yourself and you're excited about doing this. If you're enjoying yourself or you're excited about learning programming, you will learn it over time by doing it through these tutorials, looking online. I'm not too worried if you have a great grasp on the code or really at all know what we just did. As long as you can see things that you're change things in the game, I'm pretty confident that you'll be happy enough to, want to learn more. So, to end this off, let us submit the code changes we made. So, if you just go up to source control and hit submit to source control, it will bring up the files that you changed, and you can write up a change list. Changed default input INI to use the left shift button for sprinting. You can hit submit. And now, I'll go over more of GitHub stuff and the next time we do this. But now, if you ever want to revert the sprinting changes and you didn't want to be able to sprint anymore, you can just go in there, go back to before we made those changes, and you're all done, okay? So if you want to see your changes, you can do it two ways. You can go to the file, the path where the Git folder was, right-click, go to Tortoise Git, go to Show Log. And then you will see all the changes that happened. Which I did a bunch of test commits because I was testing it different ways to show you guys. This is probably my favorite method because it updates right away. There's a more convenient method for new users, which is to use the GitHub desktop app. However, I often have troubles with it actually updating. It will only update for me like once a day. So I will have these changes tomorrow, but I won't have them. I probably won't get them yet. Yeah, so I didn't get these changes at all. Now I will get them because I've used this on other projects, but for whatever reason the desktop app is really slow for me. That's not necessarily a problem. But you might want to not use that if it's confusing. Like, oh, why did this not go through? But it really did go through. And it could just be my computer. It might be something wrong on my computer. It might work perfectly for you. So feel free to use the desktop app that they give you or use the file explorer method. Either one is fine. Lastly, before I go, in the next episode, we are going to be going over actual coding. So this time we're going to be adding things. Instead of just modifying values and adding some actions, I actually want to add some health, damage. I would say even an enemy I think we can get in, but it'll be a really simple enemy. Like, it'll probably be a standing dummy where he doesn't do anything, but we can show off the damage or the health. Yeah, at that point, I think that's it. There was a lot we covered in this episode, but I'm trying to get it to a point where you're enjoying it quick enough without going too fast. So please let me know what you need to know from me. Reach out to me. Send me a comment. Send me a message on YouTube. Send me your project if you want me to look at it. I will look at it and explain to you either where you went wrong or, if something's not working properly, I can look through the error message and help you out. Anyway, guys, I'm Shawnthebro. Thanks for watching my programming tutorial. I'm probably going to turn this into a Gears of War style game, and thus the name Gears of War template. I want to have kind of this third-person aesthetic with some cover mechanics. I think that would be a very interesting game to explore. So I'd love if you would subscribe. That way you could check out all the programming videos I'm going to be putting out. I'll put out about one a week. There may be weeks where one doesn't come out because I'm human and I work. I actually program for a living. So I might be tired of programming at one point. But all jokes aside, I'm going to be doing this for quite a while. I actually have I'm going to keep working right after this episode and get some more content together for next week because that's how excited I am about it right now. So I hope you'll join me in the process. Please subscribe if you want to see more. It helps me out a ton. And then you can hit the bell, as they say, which is just clicking that little red bell. And that just gives you a notification when I post the video. I will almost definitely be... I'm losing my voice. I will almost definitely be posting every Sunday. So, yeah, guys, I look forward to seeing you on Sunday, and I look forward to answering your questions. So let me know what you need, and we're going to make a game together. Let's make something good, and you can show it off to your friends and be proud of it. I'm Shawnthebro. I'll see you in the next episode, everyone.